Hi guys, Tech here, and the build guide in the background may look a little bit familiar to you if you happen to play the Endless Delving Spellslinger build. The reason behind that is Detonate Dead's back, and it's wonderful. And the Spellslinger variant is a very budget option. There is going to be a couple of tweaks to this, which I will go over in detail. But if you want your screens to look like this, you can do that again, which is pretty cool. Now, I do want to go over some questions that came about regarding Spellslinger and some of the intricacies around it. But it's really solid for no investment whatsoever, which makes it a great candidate for league start. The other thing is we're getting super uber pinnacle content this league, and it just so happens that there is a version, while it's not this, that is good for pinnacle content, and the trees aren't really all that different. So it's something that can easily be respected if need be, with the allotted points allowed. And you can transition from a very budget-friendly version to a more mid-investment version, or directly go from the more budget version into the pinnacle version. Both are absolutely fine. You may need to purchase a couple of regret orbs, but by the time you get the gear required to make the stop, you actually don't need it at all. You don't need it whatsoever in any way, shape, or form, which makes it way better and much simpler. Now, for the budget version of this, it is going to be a Glancing Blows variant, which is still using Spellslinger. There's a big caveat here, because if you're using Glancing Blows, it can kill you, because you're still taking damage. You want to make sure you have a recovery that either is going to recover ES or life on block, and preferably both when going for the Glancing Blows variant. So I want to be very clear, you don't want to take that notable until you have the actual shield, because you're going to die, and I don't want you to have a bad time. I want you to have an amazing league start. Now, if you aren't necessarily over fond of sacrificing some defensive auras for the ease of playstyle that Spellslinger offers, don't worry, there's an alternate leveling tree that has no reservation and no Spellslinger. Most likely what I'm going to be doing is Spellslinging at the beginning and then transitioning over. However, you can do it either way, it will still work. Just know that the Spellslinger version is going to be much more glass cannon-y, regardless of anything during the leveling process. So if you're okay with dying every once in a while, assuming you're still making smart decisions like capping your reses, etc. If you're still making smart decisions and you don't mind dying a couple of times, the Spellslinger variation is going to give you really solid clear speed, as well as it's also going to give you a very big damage end of things. So if you want to just obliterate stuff before it has a chance of touching you, go Spellslinger. If you are playing hardcore, for example, and you want something that is a little bit better, or I want more defenses, I don't want to risk that death, that's perfectly fine. Use alternative leveling. The trees are the same. The trees are exactly the same. The only difference is, if you're going the alternative leveling version, you may want to start working on Corpse Pack immediately, getting those two nodes. Whereas if you're going Spellslinger, you need to get Essence Glen, because that's what gives you the mana sustain to be able to spell sling and to be very efficient, like you're seeing behind me. Now, this is before the Ignite buff, and this is also why it is able to transition into pinnacle content because of the new Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame Jewel. Because what people were using alternatively to this playstyle during this same league is they were doing an Elementalist Ignite version. Well, now we can take the only reason you would ever go Elementalist and throw that into the Necromancer tree, which the Necromancer is just a better ascendancy than the Elementalist or anything involving corpses or minions. It just has much better tools, it has much better defensive layers, and has better offensive layers. So you're getting the superior ascendancy while you are still able to take advantage of always igniting and doing the self-cast version later on. So you get access to both. Skill tree doesn't change whatsoever. You get great recovery off of Essence Glutton, so it's okay if you pick up a lot of gear that has heavy energy shield early on. Like if you get just energy shield gear in life, you're fine. It will work as soon as you have Essence Glutton, because the Essence Glutton will keep your energy shield filled up, which is fantastic. The other portion, which is very important to remember, is that this is going to be a Divine Shield build style. Now, Divine Shield also has kind of a caveat attached to it, which is you do not want to activate Divine Shield until your armor is high enough over your energy shield. There's a couple of ways you can do that. The easiest way is using Determination and something like the Aegis Aurora Shield, and that will self-sustain itself, basically. So you can absolutely go that route if you want to, until you can get a double recovery shield. That shield was very expensive last league. I'm not sure if it's going to be the same or not. It is not required by any sense of the imagination, but it is a very easy way to make Divine Shield work with Determination and lets you have a little bit more freedom on your other gear piece. So just know that's an option. It's not at all required. And it definitely isn't recommended if you're going for pinnacle content. There's better shields that are just going to be rare shields that you can craft yourself. Now, another thing to keep in mind is this is the skill tree for Delve League. The new skill tree is going to look a little bit different. And it's because I wanted to make it where it had a seamless transition between 3 different versions, which just has some different pathing once you get past 100 skill points. So your first 100 skill points in any of these 3 trees are exactly the same. Then once you get past those 100 skill points is where you have some differences. Now, one other really big important new thing to bring up is we are going to be opening up the guild. How the guild is going to be used is it's going to be primarily a voice chat guild, primarily for 2 groups of people, but we're also happy to include a third. So the first group of people that we're interested in joining are newer players that are going to need a lot of additional help. The other group that we are looking at joining are more experienced players who don't mind helping newer players. The third group, of course, that's also welcome, even though it's not the primary focus, is kind of more intermediate players, where you have some basic game knowledge. You also may have, so you can help some of the new player questions, you may not can answer them all. Basically, all 3 are welcome to apply. Very brief POB rundown. You have your tree levels here at the bottom, 1 through 100. Exactly the same. It doesn't matter which version you're using, they will work. The only caveat is it is set as I am planning on doing it, which is Spellslinger into eventually going towards the pinnacle content setup. If you are not wanting to spell sling, I would recommend not getting Essence Glutton first and instead go into Plague Bringer and then Corpse Pack. Again, that is only if you are playing hardcore or you prefer self-casting. I would ramp this way instead. Only caveat whatsoever to that portion. As far as the notes, they are very, very robust. So if you have questions, please check the notes first. There's probably answers already in here. It has a general leveling stuff, just very important things to know. The recommended leveling setup, this is Spellslinger. It also has how to start spellslinging, and it gives you a step-by-step guide of exactly what you need to do for that. It tells you what Spectre to get, which is an Act 3 in Solar's Temple, which is the Auric Colossus. And you only need that if you are spellslinging. If you're doing Unearth, you can completely disregard Spectre. Then for budget content, it also talks about when to pick up Glancing Blows. There is a section explaining Spellslinger recovery rate, as well as the wiki resource, so you can see all the different examples of how to lower or raise your cooldown recovery rate depending on where you are. How you find the numbers that you need to balance this out to maximize your DPS is in Calcs. Under Frenzy, under the attack and cast rate, you're looking at attack time. You go over to Spellslinger initial setup, and under skill type specific stats, you're looking at skill cooldown. You want those two to match, or for skill cooldown to exactly double your attack time. Either will work just fine, but you want one of those two results. You will have to play around with it. You will have to do some math to get the most DPS humanly possible. So just kind of know that when referencing Spellslinger. We also have a survival tips. So look at survival tips. If you're having any trouble with surviving whatsoever, it is probably covered there. If you would prefer to self-cast the entire way, here is the recommended alternate leveling, what you will need to do for muling purposes to get the 2 gems required to level this way. And it walks you step by step through. There is some very basic, easy answer crafting under crafting upgrades. Enhancing damage. This is going to get very, very complicated very, very quickly. I'm going to try to keep it brief. Basically, for pinnacle content, it talks about the gloves that you want, exactly what you can get on them. You don't have to get all of this. This is just the ideal. So the perfect scenario would be to get all this. It will affect cost, obviously. The more mods you get, the more expensive it's going to be. It talks about what you can use for auras to replace the Spellslinger. It also talks about the Forbidden Jewels to give us Shaper of Flames, which is also in the items section. This stuff can get very, very expensive, so know that. Pinnacle content is going to be expensive this league. So on this, you're going to have to get these kind of items. On Absolution, which I'll make an update for, you're going to have to craft a really good minion helm. You can't just craft any old helm with +3 on it anymore. You're going to need more than that for pinnacle content. It talks about how leveling Desecrate and Unearth increases corpse life, or corpse level, which in turn increases their life, which is very important for damage. How to achieve maximum damage, the enchant and the focus mod for in-game bossing, both rotations, the Spellslinger rotation as well as the Unearth rotation. So you have both options available to you. Under skills, it's going to be very basic. You're going to notice that the under the aura tag, determination and grace are both turned off. Essentially, you're probably only going to have these two while leveling. Alternatively, you can take off these two and run one of these if you're using Spellslinger. If you're not using Spellslinger, you can run these plus one of these pretty easily. You can import your gear, and then you can see which one works better by just clicking enable, and you can see where your reservation is at and everything along those lines. The DD self-cast link is for using with the initial Spellslinger setup. Then there is also the Forbidden Gem link, which is going to be different. How you want to socket the High Templar gloves if you get those. How to socket a trigger wand once you get that. How to set up the Flame Surge curse, etc., etc. is all in here. I have a magic gear set, and a couple of suggestions. They are not necessary. These are suggested items that you can get that will make your life much, much easier. Again, not at all necessary, but it is there for you to use. And then on the passive tree, this will give you, depending on which build you're at or where you're at, just select the appropriate place and it will tell you what gems you need. And the same thing on the tree down here. Turn it up to wherever you're at and you can follow along. Again, 81 through 100 is exactly the same no matter which build you're going through. And then it varies greatly from there at the end game portion of the tree. So you kind of want to decide where you want to be at. The other thing is if you plan perfectly, which 1 through 20 shouldn't need to respec anything. Just do this. 21 through 40 shouldn't need to respec anything. You should just do this. Basically, once you are here from Cool Prep, you want to basically come down and get Sovereignty and this res node, and then you want to get Purity of Flesh. Once you do that, come over here, get this res node. And then once we get to 41 to 60, you'll notice we want to fill these two in first. Then you're going to want to come down here and get Elemental Overload. Once you do that, then I would recommend coming over here and getting Red Blood and Shade, because Shade is very, very good. This build does struggle with damage over time since it is a block-based build. Then at 61 to 80, you're going to notice we're going to get some more damage. Primarily, that's all we're getting is damage. Then at 81 to 100, we're going to pick up a bunch more life. We're going to get Divine Shield. We're going to get Sanctum of Thought, and we're going to get Divine Judgment. So this is kind of where you should end up at, right around ending acts. You might be a little bit under this. You might be a little bit over this, just depending on how much you clear. And then you can go into the various in-game trees. So if you're enjoying Spellslinger, just click on Spellslinger. If you want to self-cast, click on self-cast. If this is your second character and you're wanting to jump into Pinnacle content, click on Pinnacle content and then go from there. I hope this is helpful, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing league start and have a fantastic day, Exile.